The purpose of this video is to show you how to run k-means cluster analysis in Complexit. As the previous video showed, the first step obviously is to get your data set in and ready from a case-based perspective and to make sure the data set is in a CSV file format, which is basically an Excel sheet separated by commas. You're bringing in your file and making sure it looks correct. In this case, we're continuing with our Welsh multiple deprivation index. So your cases are here, your variables are correctly identified in scores, and it's time to move on to do your cluster analysis. As you see up here, we have a number of steps to think through to make sure that you're dealing with all the key things that need to be dealt with in a k-means analysis. And then in addition to the tutorial that you're watching, a link to further reading. But first, let's talk real quick about what k-means cluster analysis is. It is a method of vector quantization. That means it's trying to partition the data rather quickly into a series of clusters that best represent it. You can see here in this case, for the machine, it's looking for a 3-cluster solution. And that's one of the key things about cluster analysis, is that even in Complexit, the first thing you have to do, based on either the literature, a guess, expertise, or experience, is define for the computer how many clusters you want it to look for. We'll talk about these two statistics in a minute, and then run it. And you see you get your cluster means. Just like you have a profile for each individual case, you also get a profile for your cluster. And that's the average scores on these factors for the cases in it. So for example, in cluster 1 down here, these are the communities or authority districts that belong to that particular cluster. So k-means is looking for the centroids, as you see as it moves across time, or cluster centers, which represent the average for the cases that are being associated with that cluster. Here is a nice example of this 3-cluster solution, and as each iteration takes place, each run of the algorithm, the k-means algorithm, the data is being fitted by the model to get and to arrive at the best cluster solution. A really good article for those who are interested in a more in-depth look at cluster analysis and k-means is this article by Jan 50 Years Beyond K-Means, and it actually is the article that we have set up here linked to for further reading. As far as interpreting the data goes, we have provided 2 statistics, the silhouette and the pseudo-F. Again, the focus here with Complexit is to have an intuitive and quick sense of the data for people who are not necessarily experts in this particular approach, but want to use it. The pseudo-F basically tells you the goodness of fit, and you'll see, for example, you can run it, and this second run got a better pseudo-F than the first. So one of the things you explore with a cluster solution, in this case 5, is to look at your pseudo-F and try to get it as high as you can. This fit, again, is not as good as that fit, which is not as good as this fit. It seems to be a pretty good fit. And this is part of the data mining approach to things, is that you're looking for models to fit the data rather than trying to fit the data to a pre-existing model in the case of linear statistics or regression. The nice thing about the silhouette plot then is you first of all make sure you've got all 22 cases in your database, which are numerically identified down here. And then the scoring goes from 0 to 1. The closer the bar is to 1, the better that case fit with that cluster. So you can see, for example, that the majority of cases in cluster 3 fit rather well. Same with 2 and also 4. You also get an average silhouette fit statistic, which tells you, generally speaking, how well the data fit overall, and that's reasonably good giving real-world data. And so you want to explore that and try different options. You might reduce case numbers after running it and look to see if that's particularly a better fit by looking at the pseudo-F. First of all, one of the things you notice is that a 4-cluster solution does not provide the strength that a 5-cluster solution provides. However, you do see a little bit silhouette fit reasonably okay, but again, it's not as strong as the 5. So you can explore your data set with this in mind of looking at these 2 key statistics to try to get a good fit. All of this data, by the way, is being saved in the background so that when you go to generate your report, you will have this information. You will have a CSV file that provides you with your cluster solutions and the case solutions, and also provides you this silhouette plot and basic statistical information along with additional information. That then basically is what cluster analysis is about in Complexit. And it's really about exploring that and getting a good fit, which then allows you to move to the next tab, which is to use machine intelligence to corroborate the solution that you found.